pursued by a ferocious tiger. The monk raced to the edge of a cliff, glanced back, and saw the growling tiger about to spring. The monk spotted a rope dangling over the edge of the cliff. He grabbed it and began shinnying down the side of the cliff out of the clutches of the tiger. Phew! Narrow escape. The monk then looked down and saw a quarry of jagged rocks 500 feet below. He looked up and saw the tiger poised atop the cliff with bared claws. Just then, 2 mice began to nibble at the rope. What to do? The monk saw a strawberry within arm's reach growing out of the face of the cliff. He plucked it, ate it, and exclaimed, "Yum! That's the best strawberry I've ever tasted in my entire life." If he had been preoccupied with the rock below, the future, or the tiger above, the past, he would have missed the strawberry God was giving him in the present moment. Children do not focus on the tigers of the past or the future, but only on the strawberry that comes in the here and now. The Apostle Paul grasped the full meaning of Jesus' teaching on becoming like a little child. Serving as a coat rack during the stoning of Stephen and as a ringleader in the slaughter of Christians, Paul might well have become pathological had he dwelt on his pre-Christian past. But he writes, "I can only say that forgetting all that lies behind me and straining forward to what lies in front." Philippians 3:13. Whatever past achievements might bring us honor, whatever past disgraces might make us blush, all have been crucified with Christ and exist no more except in the deep recesses of eternity, where good is enhanced into glory and evil miraculously established as part of the greater good. It is important to remember the Jewish attitude toward children in first-century Palestine if we are to grasp the full force of Jesus' teaching here. In the present day, we tend to idealize childhood as the happy age of innocence, insouciance, and simple faith. But in New Testament times, the child was considered of no importance, meriting little attention or favor. Children in that society had no status at all. They did not count. The child was regarded with scorn. For the disciple of Jesus, becoming like a little child means the willingness to accept oneself as being of little account and to be regarded as unimportant. The little child who is the image of the kingdom is a symbol of those who have the lowest places in society, the poor and the oppressed, the beggars, the prostitutes and tax collectors, the people whom Jesus often called the little ones or the least. Jesus' concern was that these little ones should not be despised or treated as inferior. See Matthew 18:10. He was well aware of their feelings of shame and inferiority, and because of his compassion, they were, in his eyes, of extraordinarily great value. As far as he was concerned, they had nothing to fear. The kingdom was theirs. There is no need to be afraid, little flock, for it has pleased your Father to give you the kingdom. Luke 12:32. Jesus gave these scorned little ones a privileged place in the kingdom and presented them as models to would-be disciples. They were to accept the kingdom in the same way a child would accept her allowance. If the children were privileged, it was not because they had merited privilege, but simply because God took pleasure in these little ones whom adults despised. The mercy of Jesus flowed out to them wholly from unmerited grace and divine preference. The hymn of jubilation in Luke carries the same theme. I bless you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, for hiding these things from the wise and clever and revealing them to mere children. Yes, Father, for that is what it pleased you to do. The scribes were treated with excessive deference in Jewish society because of their education and learning. Everyone honored them because of their wisdom and intelligence. The mere children, napioi in Greek, really meaning babes, were Jesus' image for the uneducated and ignorant. He is saying that the gospel of grace has been disclosed to and grasped by the uneducated and ignorant instead of the learned and wise. For this, Jesus thanks God. The babes, napioi, are in the same state as the children, paidia. God's grace falls on them because they are negligible creatures, not because of their good qualities. They may be aware of their worthlessness, but this is not the reason revelations are given to them. Jesus expressly attributes their good fortune to the Father's good pleasure, the divine eudokia. The gifts are not determined by the slightest personal quality or virtue. They were pure liberality. Once and for all, Jesus deals the death blow to any distinction between the elite and the ordinary in the Christian community. Further light is cast on the Ragamuffin Gospel by the sinner's privilege. As I mentioned earlier, Jesus is seated at a table in Levi's house when the scribes and Pharisees badger him as to why he consorts with ragamuffins. Jesus says to them, "I have come to call sinners, not the self-righteous." The sinners to whom Jesus directed his messianic ministry were not those who skipped morning devotions or Sunday church. His ministry was to those whom society considered real sinners. They had done nothing to merit salvation. Yet they opened themselves to the gift that was offered them. On the other hand, the self-righteous placed their trust in the works of the law and closed their hearts to the message of grace. But the salvation Jesus brought could not be earned. There could be no bargaining with God in a petty poker table atmosphere. I have done this, therefore you owe me that. Jesus utterly destroys the juridical notion that our works demand payment in return. Our puny works do not entitle us to barter with God. Everything depends upon His good pleasure. Several years ago, I remember an angry letter written to the editor of a national evangelical magazine by an irate Catholic priest actively involved in the ministry of evangelism. He vehemently protested the cover story and picture of Francis McNutt, also a Catholic priest with a worldwide healing ministry. McNutt had recently married. The letter writer demanded to know why a previous article done on himself had been buried in the back of the magazine without a photo. He had stayed celibate all these years and had been given second-class treatment, while McNutt, who had disobeyed the Pope and resigned the priesthood, was given star status. The author of the letter deemed the whole thing grossly unfair. My wife Rosalind read his letter and remarked, "Shades of the elder brother of the prodigal son." However, this decided uneasiness with the Ragamuffin Gospel is not confined to one Christian tradition. In every denomination and non-denominational persuasion, Christians are seeking to win God's favor by plunging into more spiritual activities, multiplying altars and sacrifices, making charitable contributions, lengthening the time of formal prayer, and getting involved in more church-related organizations. There is need for careful discernment here. The evidence of earnestness, sincerity, and effort is considerable. The Christian's lifestyle is pious, proper, and correct. What's missing? He or she has not surrendered to the Christ of grace. The danger with our good works, spiritual investments, and all the rest of it is that we can construct a picture of ourselves in which we situate our self-worth. Complacency then replaces sheer delight in God's unconditional love. Our doing becomes the very undoing of the Ragamuffin Gospel. Nowhere in the New Testament is the privileged position of turkeys, nobodies, and marginal people on the fringes of society disclosed more dramatically than in Jesus' ministry of meal sharing. In modern times, it is scarcely possible to appreciate the scandal Jesus caused by his table fellowship with sinners. In the year 1925, if a wealthy plantation owner in Atlanta extended a formal invitation to 4 colored cotton pickers to come to his mansion for Sunday dinner, preceded by cocktails and followed by several hours of brandy and conversation, the Georgia aristocracy would have been outraged, neighboring Alabama infuriated, and the Ku Klux Klan apoplectic. 60 or 70 years ago in the Deep South, the caste system was inviolable. Social and racial discrimination inflexible, and indiscretion made the loss of reputation inevitable. In first-century Palestinian Judaism, the class system was enforced rigorously. It was legally forbidden to mingle with sinners who were outside the law. Table fellowship with beggars, tax collectors, traitors to the national cause because they were collecting taxes for Rome from their own people to get a kickback from the take, and prostitutes was religiously, socially, and culturally taboo. Sadly, the meaning of meal sharing is largely lost in the Christian community today. In the Near East, to share a meal with someone is a guarantee of peace, trust, fraternity, and forgiveness. The shared table symbolizes a shared life. An Orthodox Jew's saying, "I would like to have dinner with you," is a metaphor that implies, "I would like to enter into friendship with you." Even today, an American Jew will share a donut and a cup of coffee with you, but to extend a dinner invitation is to say, "Come to my mikdash miyat," the miniature sanctuary of my dining room table, where we will celebrate the most sacred and beautiful experience that life affords, friendship. That is what Zacchaeus heard when Jesus called him down from the sycamore tree, and that is why Jesus' practice of table fellowship caused hostile comment from the outset of his ministry. It did not escape the Pharisees' attention that Jesus meant to befriend the rabble. He was not only breaking the law, he was destroying the very structure of Jewish society. They all complained when they saw what was happening. "He has gone to stay at a sinner's house," they said. Luke 19:7. But Zacchaeus, not too hung up on respectability, was overwhelmed with joy. It would be impossible to overestimate the impact these meals must have had upon the poor and the sinners. By accepting them as friends and equals, Jesus had taken away their shame, humiliation, and guilt. By showing them that they mattered to him as people, he gave them a sense of dignity and released them from their old captivity. The physical contact which he must have had with them at table, see John 13:25, and which he obviously never dreamed of disallowing, see Luke 7:38-39, must have made them feel clean and acceptable. Moreover, because Jesus was looked upon as a man of God and a prophet, they would have interpreted his gesture of friendship as God's approval on them. They were now acceptable to God. Their sinfulness, ignorance, and uncleanness had been overlooked and were no longer being held against them. Through table fellowship, Jesus ritually acted out his